Greetings, my brothers and sisters. Sending gratitude to all of you who are joining in today to accompany us down the rabbit hole of self-exploration through plant medicines. My name is Ryan Sprague, and I'm here to tell you that your frequency is now set and tuned to explore psychedelic medicines and the impact they've made among the countless psychonauts exploring the last true frontier. Buy a ticket and take the ride with me as we get true first-hand accounts of the experiences, benefits, risks, and transformations taking place within the ever-expanding world of psychedelic medicines on This One Time on Psychedelics. Within the ever-expanding popularity of plant medicines and psychedelics alike, we often hear about how important it is to be able to integrate these experiences if we wish to experience lasting change beyond the peak experience or ceremony itself. Without this integration work, we will ultimately have an incredible experience that, similar to a dream, will begin to fade away as our old programs and patterns take over. From my own personal experience, one of the most powerful integration practices I take part in is that of daily breath work. Many times we think of integration as coaching, therapy, or another modality of that sort. And while those are absolutely amazing, we don't always have the access necessary to employ these practices into our daily lives. Our breath, however, is only an inhale away, and historically speaking, has been one of the most powerful self-awareness and self-healing modalities that humans have connected with since the dawn of time. Joining us today on the show is a master in the art form of breathwork and is a true wizard in the ways in which he teaches this form within both his online breathwork certification, Inflaux, where practitioners can become certified in the unique way that he teaches breathwork, as well as his Breathwork App, BreathCAST, in which individuals looking to begin their breathwork routine and take their well-being to new heights can do so from wherever they are in the world at any time. If all of this wasn't enough, he also shares each of our love and reverence for what plant medicines and psychedelics can bring forth into our lives when used intentionally. And I must say, I am beyond excited to dive into all of these subjects and more with him. This episode is jam-packed with useful information that will empower you, inspire you, and drop you into the childlike curiosity regarding the vast amount of possibilities and mysteries within the scope of the human experience. So, I ask that all of you put your explorer hats on and give me a hand in welcoming my man Bill Burnett to the show. Bill, what's up, dude?
Hey, brother. Thanks for having me.
Of course, man. It's 6 a.m. where you're at. We were just talking about how much of a unit you are. And, as someone who's been challenged getting up early for most of my life because the nighttime's just so inviting. I feel like when the world's asleep, my mind can really go wild. And so you're in Australia, man, 6 a.m. in a beautiful house that you guys just rented. And I'm super stoked to have you here and to be able to take this journey with you, my man.
Thanks, brother. I struggled for a long time too until I joined the military. And it conditioned me to a point where it's like, you better get up.
Yeah.
And if you don't, it's going to suck.
Yeah. Yes, that will definitely do it. It's funny. Every single person I know who has had military training and been, enlisted in the military, they all have that same type of regiment. And, I see that being one of the plus sides of the military, right? There's plenty of plus sides. There's plenty of, challenging sides to it. But, that type of routine is really nice, especially, I've been fortunate enough to be pretty regimented my whole life. Now, for most of my life, up until the last about 7 or 8 years, those regiments were in things that weren't exactly doing me all that much good. And then luckily I was able to transform that. But, I know for a lot of people, they struggle with the whole idea of routines. And so I see the military being able to be a huge help in that journey.
Yeah, it left its residual energetic signature on me of that level of discipline. And I'm appreciative for it. There's parts of the military that I absolutely loathe and have decided to let go and disassociate from. But, that level of, getting up early, being organized, having your uniform prepped, cleaning your room, making your bed. My wife would laugh at this, but being on time. If it's important to me, I'm on time. You
and I share that, man. Like I work between the concepts of time or, between the parallels of time a lot. And, I'm really good at getting everywhere on time when it comes to business. But as soon as the weekend rolls around, I'm on vacation vibration, man,
Agreed.
Yeah. Living beyond the confines of time is something that whenever I meet other people that do the same, I'm like, preach, you get me.
100%.
And that's one of the reasons that I imagine, the nomadic lifestyle, which is something you're getting into right now, is so attractive, right? Is that And a lot of times, especially when I've been on more of a nomadic lifestyle, especially living with other people, I mean, yeah, you might wake up at a, similar time every day, but the rest is just free flow, right? And you get your stuff done, but it always happens in a little bit different of a container and a little bit different of a schedule. And I really enjoyed that, having more flow in my life was really good because like I said, I am very structured and regimented just in my own insane ways.
Yeah, look, that in itself has been a huge change for me. We've been on the road 3 months now. There is 4 adults, 2 children traveling currently, and I imagine that to grow pretty soon, actually, in the new year. But, something that our very good friend Jared had taught me was scheduling and being able to schedule weeks ahead, if not a week ahead. And no matter whether I get up early, whether I go in and do work to get Wi-Fi or reception, my schedule's there and it's ready to roll. And so I've had that autonomy to be able to go, you know what, I'm a little flexible today. Either I don't believe in time or I do believe in time. That's okay.
Yes. And again, it's that willpower, right? It's that will period, right? That allows you to make that conscious choice as a sovereign being of whether or not you want to work within the confines of time or whether you're willing to let that go in that particular day. And I think that's like, one of the things that for me and, really what we're going to get into heavy here is, what psychedelics have opened up for me, right? Is that there is no right or wrong. It's just what is right for you in this moment.
Yeah. Yeah, I was having a conversation with a very close friend of mine last week, and we were talking about the notion of simply taking drugs or utilizing psychedelics to explore the human consciousness. And I honestly think it's a blurred line, and it's a fickle line as well. There can be predominantly, based around behaviors and habits that intertwine with that relationship with psychedelics. And it does give you that independence to be able to explore everything that is occurring in your reality and take it that one step further, as well as acknowledge what is my level of psychology and relationship to the psychedelics itself.
Yeah. What is the reason, right? And, at the end of the day, I'm a fan of not always needing a particular, a strict reason, but the reason is really another synonymous word that I use for intention, right? So, maybe that reason or intention is I'm simply curious, right? I don't know about what, but I'm simply curious. But, having been someone that has gone to plenty of music festivals, and seen people just kind of choosing in the moment to take things. And I'm not there to judge that decision, but, having done that myself in the past, at best, I just don't get as much out of it. At worst, I have an experience that quickly turns into an ordeal, right? And, that type of translation is not one I'm a fan of. Like, I'll take things I do not want to experience for 500.
Yeah. And look, what you just said there, that in itself, that was part of the conversation I was having with my buddy here. And we were talking predominantly about MDMA, right? It's predominantly the recreational drug here. Specifically here in Australia, I'm not too sure stateside, but here in Australia, MDMA is more the recreational space. And what I have learned from it is that, hang on, heard a big hissing. I don't know whether that was a snake.
Hey, everybody. I hope you're enjoying the show. I wanted to take a quick moment to let you all know that the doors are officially open for the Conscious Cannabis Collective. And as such, this is the last week you can sign up and receive all of the bonuses we're currently including. This is the last time I will be personally onboarding those of you who sign up with a complimentary one-on-one session, and you'll have the ability to get the Grow with Cannabis course for free during this limited time. For more info on how you can take advantage of this offer, head down to the show notes for this episode and secure your spot today, as we only have so many spots left and they are filling up quickly. Now back to the show. Tell me you're in Australia without telling me you're in Australia.
Who knows in this place? Everywhere. Hey? Oh, it's my wife making a coffee.
Yeah. Hey, you got to be careful when you're down under. I haven't been yet, but I've heard. There's one thing I've heard.
To kill you.
Yeah, man. I've heard there's and again, I've never fact checked this. Maybe this is just a US thing that they say, but that there's more things that will kill you in Australia than any other continent in the world.
I believe it, man. I believe it. Sorry, detract there. Yeah, we're talking about MDMA. So we were talking about MDMA and its use, and predominantly recreational. And what I was getting to, my intention with MDMA, because I practice the use of and applying with breathwork, which I'd love to get into today.
Oh, dude.
Yes. The atmosphere of creating a relationship with people after the application of MDMA. It doesn't have to be this, I'm blasting off into the cosmos, exploring what my level of consciousness is about and the parameters of that. It can be as pure and as intentional as, sitting with people, holding space and learning heart to heart, in heart coherence, and learning about each other. That can be a psychedelic intention. And that is a great intention, right?
Absolutely. With MDMA, in particular, that's something that I would suffice to say is pretty recreational here too, in terms of like typical standards. Definitely at music festivals, and the challenge with it that I found is that, first of all, people are unaware of really what it is, right? I was when I first found it. And also they're unaware of the potential challenges that can come with doing it too frequently, right? And that's one of the things that I look to educate people on, both with this podcast and also just, when I'm at music festivals now, right? I haven't gone to one really in a couple of years now since the pandemic, but, with shows and things like that, I'm always the one that, will have tons of vitamins on hand, right? And things that will help people protect themselves, right? Because at the end of the day, harm reduction is really the name of the game when it comes to psychedelics, because I don't know about you, and I imagine, you fall into this category too, but, I don't want to have these medicines be something that, either impact my ability to live in my typical day-to-day life in my sober state of reality, or something that, I burn out on and doesn't give me the quote unquote magic anymore. And that's something that, when I looked into MDMA, when I was first researching it and first getting curious about it, a lot of people mentioned that, especially people that got into it at younger ages, is that they did it so often that they quote unquote lost the magic. And, I don't know exactly what's going on there. I mean, I imagine there's some type of serotonin receptor damage going on, but at the same time, luckily there is so much research coming out now from prestigious organizations such as MAPS, such as, John Hopkins, these places that are actually starting to illuminate this harm reduction aspect of any type of psychedelic, and really any type of medicine in general, cannabis, psilocybin mushrooms, LSD, etc., ketamine, all of these things that are really impactful when used properly. And, at the end of the day, one thing I've noticed with MDMA is exactly what you said. It is the ultimate heart opener. But really, like I was saying in the intro, if you don't actually understand that that's happening, then you're just going to be taken away by it, right? Because you're using unconsciously, and you're ultimately, it's going to kind of be a waste, right? Because then you're going to feel the challenging aspects of the come down, and you're not going to understand how to integrate it. And one of the things, specifically about MDMA that I really had illuminated for me in the last, couple of years is that, people often talk about this come down, right? And they talk about it as oh man, yeah, MDMA, great, but the week after that sucks, right? And I fell into this exact same type of thinking for a long time about it, and conditioning. And what I realized was, well, actually, in a way, you're having the ultimate heart-opening experience where you feel connected to everyone, right? You're seeing what's possible for you. And then the next week, you're facing essentially your shadow. You're facing all of the things that are blocking you from feeling the peak experience you felt all the time, right? So during that week after, you'll have the pain points that are high enough and big enough to have that hard conversation, right? To quit the job you don't like, to figure out what your purpose is, right? So if you use that week after, when you are depleted of, dopamine, serotonin, these different neurotransmitters, if you use that for your own good and choose to see it happening for you, there's actually just as much of an amazing opportunity in that as the peak experience. And that's really big and powerful to me.
Yeah, I feel like we're teetering on a word called integration. And
yes.
it is the most powerful element to, the administration of psychedelics or the practice of psychedelics. And in that moment, we can learn more about ourselves outside of the chemical enhancement or the hormonal drive in a normal state, or normal, quote unquote, normal state of reality, to which we are not influenced by these beautiful medicines. And MDMA specifically, as you just eloquently put it, is this application of come into this space where real world exists, and then the come down is the acknowledgement, I'm coming back to a reality to which I don't want to be a part of.
Yes.
Look, if you don't want to be a part of it, fucking do something. Take some action.
Yes.
Explore psychedelics and journey with them, and you get to a point in your life where you're coming down and you're like, wow, that was horrible, and I don't want to be in this space. Take some action. Utilize the medicines to get you to that point where you're going to take some action and drastically make some change on your life, because that's what these medicines are capable of giving you the opportunity for.
Yeah. And careful to say, because I don't want to put, my intention on anyone else. But at the same time, at least for me, I'll make it more personal. My intention is to, illuminate things, right? Because at the end of the day, manifestation, right, is something that's talked about a lot, right? And I feel like there's a misnomer. And my mystery school guy was talking about this the other day, and it really rang true for me because it's what I've experienced over especially the last 2 years, but really the last 10 years is that a lot of times people talk about manifestation and they're like, I want to manifest more money, right? And they think that by saying that and setting that intention, that more money will find them, right? But really, the whole idea of manifestation, when you really boil it down, is to actually find out what in you is blocking you from emanating the frequency that you're looking to bring in. So if you're looking to bring in more money, that could be referred to as abundance, right? You're looking for more abundance. Well, where in you are you blocking yourself from abundance, right? And that's what these medicines can illuminate for you. They can help you see when the parameters of your ego and your default mode network and these different aspects of the brain, the inner critic, are down. They can help you actually have that conversation with yourself and go, yeah, you know what? Like, I'm not being abundant in this way, right? I'm living in scarcity, right? Now I see that. And then when you come down, you're then able to take that reflection and then integrate it through journaling, through breath work, through meditation, through coaching, through therapy, through anything any modality that works for you and you so choose, to be able to actually get that repaired within yourself. And then what will start happening is you'll just be emanating a vibe of abundance, a vibration of abundance. And all of a sudden, money and love and friendships and all of these things that are representative of abundance will start just hitting you out of nowhere. You'll be like, oh, I didn't even have to think of that, right? So I think that, when we can think about the idea of something like manifestation with regards to the idea of what plant medicines can illuminate for us and what their real purpose is, it's so powerful because it helps us realize that really the answers are always within.
Yeah, and a lot of people talk about this remembering as part of the experience, and I like the word that you use, illuminate, because for me that really lands nice and clear and it's accurate. What I do as a facilitator in breathwork is bring people to this space where they're not necessarily finding the new fix or the thing that's going to change their life, but they are coming upon what they call the remembering, which is illuminating their stuckness. Now, in the ecosystem to which you and I live in, we talk about story work, and we can break that down into behavioral patterns, conditioning, programming, that has all been signaled, and we can go into the epigenetics of it, but signaled from our society, from our environments, from our family systems, from our nutrition, words, spells, carrying energy, and to which the illumination highlights the story. It puts it on a billboard, essentially. And where we say we may be, stuck in this scarcity mindset in a financial sense, we get to illuminate the story of my scarcity mindset comes from this relationship to wealth or money or prosperity due to this conditioning of this XYZ. And we can break that down further. And I do the same with breathwork. And then when synergistically applied with psychedelics as well, we can go deeper again and start to look at what is our emotional relationship to that. How do I feel when I take this action? How do I feel when I apply this method? What is this doing to me? And we can explore that right down to the molecular level, and then flip the script. We can change the patterns. We can change the way that our neurotransmitters are starting to fire and wire and travel through our body to create the pattern that was there and create a new pattern. And we can look at that within the space and in the experience.
Yeah, man, that was poetically said. And, I agree with every single aspect of that. And, really it brings up, for me, this conversation or this subject rather of the shadow, right? And a lot of times I know what I fell into was like people talk about shadow work, right? And it's like, ooh, that's scary, right? But, a lot of times we think like, oh, the shadow is holding all these dark sides of me that I don't want to see. But in most cases, the dark sides of you, first of all, you already have within you, which is why you're having challenging results happening in your life. All that shadow work does is illuminate those things and bring them into the light, right? So that then you can accept the parts of you and make yourself whole again that are currently separated from you and making you feel less than. And the cool thing that I've realized is that a lot of shadow work is actually bringing like the divinity, the things that are the best parts of you into the light, right? So a lot of times, now, when I'm interacting with a psychedelic and my intention is to like go into my shadow, it's like, hey, what things are holding me back? And also what things are waiting to be discovered that are the next phase of my purpose or the next chapter in my never ending quest of purpose. And, that's something that's been really powerful to me. And really it's whatever you choose to think of it as when it comes to psychedelics, when it comes to integration, when it comes to shadow work, when it comes to any of these subjects we're talking about. But really, I feel that people's biggest fears, and I'll use my biggest fears when I was, first starting with psychedelics was having this quote unquote bad trip, right? And now I'm actually excited to have those experiences, right? Like the good parts are amazing, but like my daily life, my sober reality is pretty friggin' awesome at this point because I've chosen to go into a lot of the things that were my quote unquote shadow, right? And so, now I'm just looking for like, hey, what is holding me back, right? Because I want to meet those things with love. I want to hold them. I want to show them love, and I want to bring them into the light because they're all me, right? And anything and everything is love if you choose to view it that way. And for me, choosing to look at life at that way, not because I can prove it quantitatively, not because I quote unquote know it, but because I've tried the other way and now I've tried this way, and this way is so much more fun and allows me to live on that vacation vibration that I joke about a lot, that, really we are the writers of our own story. And, what story work, that you mentioned has illuminated for me is that, hey, those stories are subject to change anytime you want to change them. And so if you want a better experience of life, just start really telling yourself, like, I am going to create a better experience of life for myself, and then be ready for what comes up, because you might have really high highs where, like, you do a podcast, for instance, and you're on like level 100 or level 11, if you want to go Spinal Tap here, right? But at the same time, you might be faced with like a week after that of like some dark shadow, right? Where really the only reason you're feeling the dark shadow is because, in my case, I'm not giving myself time to just like ask myself the 5-minute long, or go through the 5-minute long process of like, okay, what am I feeling? Take the journal, because I'm quote unquote too busy, And so a lot of times, like the monster shadow on the wall that we fear is just a small house cat.
And the shadow, like, it gives us the independence. The shadow gives us independence, and it gives you independence to make a choice. Gives you the independence to make a choice about, what am I bringing into the light? And if I'm not bringing it into the light, I am actively choosing to leave it in the shadow. And the shadow is not necessarily, like you said, it's not this big scary thing. It is an opportunity to explore what I could 10x. What has been holding me back? What is making me feel stuck, metaphysically and physically, emotionally and spiritually? And what can I do in order to overcome said stuckness? And that in itself is a beautiful aspect. But, there's a fantastic double series, 2 books, I don't know if you read them, called The 49th Mystic and The Rise of the Mystic, written by Ted Decker.
No, I haven't yet. I'm going to check them out, though.
Dude, they're big reads. They're really big reads, and they're fiction, but they're absolutely incredible. And it's based upon this idea of polarity and living in a realm of polarity. And, as humans, we have a tendency to choose a path of least resistance. We like things to be real easy.
Comfortable.
Like to be comfortable, right? Discomfort's a bit of a thing, but it's a great teacher as well, and in the shadow, in the journey, in the psychedelic experience, where we get to work with our quote unquote shadow, the darkness, we get to experience what discomfort is and how it can be more comfortable, how we can live better and appreciate and have a better relationship with it. And it no longer becomes this big scary thing. Personally, without projecting too much, I find the journal more of a shadow than I do going in and looking at breaking down behavioral patterns that no longer serve me. I find writing in the journal, because then I got to look at it, or maybe even singing, or these are more materialized aspects of the shadow that people should be but people if identified would be more intimidated by than the actual work of the shadow.
What is up, ladies and gentlemen? I wanted to stop by while I had your ear and share a very special announcement with you. You may have heard people say that we are facing an epidemic of loneliness in the world right now. We believe that this is only half of the story, and that the real epidemic and the root of feeling loneliness is a lack of connection. Do you want to connect to more purpose and passion with the important work you are doing? Do you wish you had closer friendships with people who understand you, listen to you, and are truly present with you? Are you wishing you and your partner could move deeper into love together? The connection in all of these areas comes down to the one most important element of connection: the ability to connect with yourself. If you are ready to see change in your life, if you are ready to feel differently when you wake up in the morning, if you are ready to step into the life you envision for yourself, the first and only route to making these changes is settling in, quieting down, and being able to connect to yourself. Now, this can be a major challenge in today's world with media, culture, and other energies that pull us out of our ability to connect. When you've tried fitness, meditation, and other self-development practices and still find yourself feeling alone and lacking connection, you may be feeling out of options and wondering if you'll ever be able to tap into your full potential that you know deep down is possible in your life. What we have found in working with our clients is that plant medicines, and cannabis in particular, can guide us in having the experience of what true connection looks and feels like. In this way, cannabis can act as a rite of passage for connection and a gateway toward the spouse, tribe, mission, and life you know you are ready for. Now, the pitfall here is that many people become codependent on the medicines, such as cannabis, and expect the medicine to do the work for them. If this continues, what will happen is the user will find themselves reaching for more and more cannabis to feel connection, without taking ownership of their role in the outcome of their experience, and thus they will fall into repeating the same painful patterns. As Zen Buddhism teaches, how you do anything is how you do everything. Therefore, if this painful pattern is showing up in your relationship with cannabis, it is likely a reflection of the same patterns you're experiencing in your friendships, romantic relationships, business, and your relationship with yourself. Learning to work with cannabis effectively will supercharge your experience and will help you get the result you are actually seeking, which is connection. We created a program to support seekers and high achievers like you in doing exactly this. To learn how to work with the healing power of cannabis to connect you back to yourself so you can unlock purpose, passion, and creativity in all areas of your life. What this program will give you is the long-lost user manual for cannabis. This user manual will teach you how to connect with cannabis correctly so that the plant can act as your spiritual aid and ally in life, just as our ancestors understood and practiced. If you're ready to unlock the full power of cannabis, meet like-minded people on the same path as you, build more purpose into your life, and have the most fun doing homework you've ever had, this message is for you. To learn more and qualify for your spot in the program, hop over to our Instagram profile at highly.optimized and book a discovery call. The conscious cannabis revolution is here. Will you be joining us? Sending all of you love. Enjoy the rest of the show. Something you brought up there that's, I really want to go into a little heavier here is the whole idea of comfort and discomfort, right? And, especially for men, right? Like Angelo Cisco has a great saying, which is for men, feminine energy, which could be synonymous with comfort, is a pit stop, not a rest stop, right? And so for everyone listening, whether you're male or female, I'll ask you this, right? Like those times where you can really go back and be like, yeah, what I experienced there was a real high. Did that come after relaxing or did that come after being in a stage of discomfort, right? I know for me, when I first started podcasting, when I first started coaching, it was really uncomfortable, right? And it still is, a lot of the time, right? But I've grown to be excited and be content within that discomfort. And this is why, we do things like breath work and cold showers and ice baths and, saunas and hot yoga and these things, right? Because over time, really, the whole idea that discomfort is just another belief system, right? It's just another belief structure, another story, right? And so, that's why some people enjoy having pain inflicted on them, right? Like, you look at the world of like BDSM and things like this, like a lot of us would look at that and be like, that does not look fun, but that person is enjoying it on some level, right? Yeah. And so while we don't have to get into BDSM to have this work, you can if you want to, right? You're a sovereign being, but what is the form of discomfort in your life that you already like, right? Like for a lot of people, it's exercise, right? I know me, like when I'm really going for it and my trainer is like rocking me, I'm in like pure bliss, right? Because I know that I can move through it, right? Now, at first, there was that feeling of like, can I get through this? And then slowly I pushed and I believed in myself. And now I just know no matter what I come up against, I'm like, okay, yeah, it feels, but yeah, I'm going to get through it, right? Because I trust myself. And that's been one of my biggest affirmations. And So like we have such an opportunity within discomfort to discover who we really are, because a lot of times in the discomfort, all of those challenging stories, voices, beliefs, and everything will come right to the surface. And so it's almost like throwing chum into the water and finding the sharks, right? Like you might think there's no sharks there, throw a bunch of chum in the water and you'll see sharks real quick, right? So, you know, a lot of times that chum metaphorically can be that discomfort or those discomforting things that we face in life. And I think that's one of the most powerful things, because anytime that I'm like, I got it together, right? I'll just throw myself some chum and be like, all right, what comes up, right? And psychedelics can be a great place to do that, because that's like 10xing the amount of chum you throw in the water, right? Because you're also like bringing up a lot of potentially ancestral traumas, ancestral beliefs, you know, things that are, you know, interwoven into your DNA that otherwise might not come up, you know? And so it's super powerful stuff, man. I love this conversation. This is awesome.
I'm always curious, you know, like I love exploring that. And I've yet to work out whether I'm becoming the saboteur or I'm actually supporting the journey when going into that space, whether it be through psychedelics, breathwork, pushing the limits. The only high I've ever had as a result of discomfort is being pushed to a point where it's like, holy fuck, I may die. And
yeah.
that's a high I have been at, where my peak expression is at peak expression. Like I am performing at my optimal performance, which I really love. I love being challenged in that place. It may be, you know, the many years in the military and the arduous training I put myself through, maybe, or that might be a level of my psychology that is present. But that is something that I get curious about is, we have a funny little saying, part of the tribe when we journey together in ceremony, is scooping the sludge. Right? Scoop the sludge. This is when I become curious as whether I become the saboteur or I'm actually embracing the journey and being like, no, I'm here to do the work, and that's what I'm here to do. And scooping the sludge becomes this notion of, all right, you know, it is comfortable right now, but what can I know more of? What can we illuminate? As you said, like, what can we illuminate? And that can be uncomfortable to scoop that. But getting to a point, and this is where I'd love to transition into the breathwork application, getting to a point to where we can acknowledge, okay, this is present. It's in my awareness right now whilst I'm in the journey. What am I going to choose to do with it? I had a recent experience with a very, very close brother of mine, where we were sitting around a fire. We created this portal. It was the three of us, Sarah, my sister, and our close brother. And he was going through some stuff. He had just been through a whole heap of shit, in fact, not to downplay it. And we were having a great experience. And then we got to a point where he goes, okay, I am aware of this. This is in my awareness right now. Do you support me? And 100%, both of us were there to support. Now, what I interacted in that space right there is a way for him to take control of the discomfort so that he could identify, okay, this is uncomfortable, but I'm actively choosing to take part. And we apply breath work. We apply some circular breathing, not intense, not to any tempo, but a way for him to gain control of his nervous system and start to regulate what is occurring for his nervous system. In that space, you can go as deep as controlling the hormonal drive, oxytocin, dopamine, cortisol, adrenaline. You can control it all. And in fact, you can control it to a point where it's almost like you're squeezing like an udder to manipulate the nervous system how you want it. I did it the night after, and I explained that as well. But you can control it to that depth. And in that space of being consciously aware, actively taking control of your body and your nervous system, whilst also being supported by medicine, some powerful things can occur. Now, he got to a space where the awareness he had broke down into subsidiary categories that he was not thinking about. He was just thinking about this generalized term. And what we call this in the breathwork community is part of the system processing, where we have input, system processes, output. Something had happened, his system process, and further to that, it's like a black box theory. It goes into the black box. We don't know what's in there, and then the body has its output, and we behave in a way. And it affects us biologically, emotionally, and spiritually. And he was aware of the main topic, not all the subsidiary categories. And so exploring it with the breath and the medicine of MDMA, he was able to break down and then spend, you know, he's still in integration. That was upwards of 6-7 weeks ago. And he is still integrating the work that we went through on that very night. and it's powerful. It is very, very powerful.
Yeah. I mean, I've had some ridiculous experiences with breath work and MDMA. I remember the first time that I experienced it, I had been discovering the beauty of breath work with psychedelics, right? And I remember the first time it was discovered was during a ceremony a friend of mine was hosting. And, I led a breathwork circle, and, we had been talking for a while. Everyone was really connected. And I was like, hey, let's do some breathwork, right? Because I had been nerding out for the last week. This was at a retreat with one guy there, my buddy Robbie, with this particular DMT style of breathing, right? It was like quick, easy. We could do it sitting on the floor right before dinner. It was fun, right? We were having a good time with it. And so I was like, hey, guys, we've been trying this out. Let's try it together. And so we did a Paul check, link hands and do the group Om thing. And just that was like psychedelic on its own. Yes. And then we went into this breath work, and no shit. I mean, it felt like my soul just got launched out of my body and then boomerang, to use an Australian term, boomerang back, right, into my frame of awareness. And all of us came back looking around the room like completely, we were on autopilot. And then immediately at the same point, every single person broke into laughter at the exact same time. And we had no conscious control over that, right? So then we got curious. We did about 20 more rounds of it. And during this time, we were really starting to get curious about what is causing us to laugh, right? And, during that time, the best theory we came up with was, well, if we're experiencing DMT through our system, right, and it's prolonged and at a higher amount, typically probably most likely because of the psychedelics we're on, well, what does DMT do, especially 5-MeO, with the human consciousness? Well, it allows you to, quote unquote, die before you die. And so the theory we came up with, and again, we have no proof of this, but it felt really true in the moment, was that, we were realizing how easy death was. And we were coming back with the cosmic laughter of that experience. And, I love that you went over with regards to, when you start to gain awareness around we could use the term shadow, we could use the term of disempowering story, we could use the term just a feeling and energy, any of that stuff, right? It's important in that container to realize that I don't know where this is going to go. And that's why having support around you is so valuable and so impactful, because you might think it's one thing, right? And if you choose to have the faith, right, to go into that and say, okay, I choose to feel it, that might continue going down. It might just be that, but in most cases, especially with me, and I know with people that I've facilitated with and people that, I've supported during these types of experiences, it's almost like you're pulling at a plant that has a root system that goes really deep. And this is what Training Camp for the Soul talks about when they say, a lot of times you can clip the weeds or you can pull the root, right? And so a lot of times what I've seen happen with people in medicine ceremonies is that, and it's happened with me too, I'll start to have a really uneasy feeling and I'll start to get scared. And what will happen is I'll experience a fraction of the full feeling, and then I'll do something to get myself back to some sort of baseline, right? And a lot of that is because I was lacking the faith, right? This is, again, 7-8 years ago, before I really knew what I was, doing with plant medicines and what their purpose was. And, this is really where I start seeing this cosmic circle of spirituality, religion, if you want to call it that, which is really just spirituality put into words. But at the same time, you can see why all of these practices have the term faith in there, right? You can see why psychedelic medicines have the word integration in there, right? Everything's got almost a piece of the puzzle, but at the same time, the mental game of trying to figure out, quote unquote, all the different parts, which I try to do for a long time, I have to have all of these spiritual practices and I have to do this and I have to do that, takes you away in a big way from just allowing the body and the mind and the spirit to do its thing, right? And I think that that's what your friend was doing so beautifully there, is just saying I'm feeling something and I'm about to surrender. Can you guys support me? Yes. Okay, perfect. That's really all it's needed, right? Because a lot of the times we try to figure it out. And so we think it's going to be work to do this. And it is work, but not in the way of the mental game, right? It's more work in terms of letting the body do its thing, letting the soul do its thing, letting the spirit do its thing. And it's kind of like if you had to go pee and you started thinking about the process of peeing and, everything like that, it would just kind of psych you out versus just going to the toilet and peeing, right? And that's kind of how I synonymize the idea of what I'm talking about here with regards to having just surrendering to the process.
Yeah, we are three-dimensional beings. You cannot avoid that, right? We have access to upper dimensions, lower dimensions for sure, different vibrations. we are so conditioned to believe that we live in this three-dimensional world and that is it. And something I really love about, if we were to dissect and break down the concept of spirituality, it is our spirits in reality. And if you look at it that way, for the listeners who are listening, like if you can understand and identify that we are living as our spirits in reality, you can also understand, or at least get close to the awareness of, by allowing your spirit to live the way that it needs to live in reality, you become more autonomous in the way that you live, because you are surrendering to the thing of, I have no control. That is the cosmic joke. You don't have control. Like, it makes me laugh when people say things about the planet or other planets, and it's like, good one. Like, we don't know to some extent, and there is no control there. And so and that's what brings us into unison. I imagine that's where I was going with that point, is that's what brings us into unison or into synchronicity with God, is by being a part of God, playing the role of our spirits in reality, which is God. And if we can get to that point of relinquishing any idea that we have control, it's a much more comfortable idea to think about.
This is one of my favorite conversations to have, right? Because what psychedelics taught me, what the most important lesson, anything, and what they taught me was that I don't know anything. And when you realize that, right? Like that quote, wise is the man who knows he does not know. What does that mean, right? It means that to the degree that you think you know things is the degree to which you are closed off. You are like closed-minded, right? Because when you know something objectively, when you know it, you're not going to be able to listen to anyone saying anything that's opposing. And when you look at the state of the world right now, I see two different types of people. There's lots of different types, but generally, I see people that know things, and I see people that know they don't know, and therefore surrendering and have faith and are spiritual and all of these things, right? And those that think they know, right? And again, like, I don't blame people for being there. I mean, if you think about, I imagine this is how it is in Australia too, but definitely in the States, we've been trained to quote unquote know things forever. Because why? Yeah. Well, throughout history, a lot of the people that have won, let's just be honest, a lot of the people that have won and therefore written the history are people that were white knuckling life because they were so terrified of the fact that life might have no meaning or all the meaning or whatever, that their whole reality was based on what they intellectually quote unquote knew. And, for me, this is one of the things that is so freeing, because when I realize that I don't know anything, then I can tune into what allows me to feel good, right? And so then I can get what's called subjective truths, which is, hey, for me, I know, for instance, what I like to do for my health regimens, right? Now, a lot of people, especially with what's going on right now in the world, they want to do their own thing. And people that are on this side of the fence are saying, hey, do whatever it takes for you to feel safe, right? Like, that's the whole point. Like, sovereign beings, right? You do you. But then the other side is basically saying, well, in order for me to feel this way, I need you to do this. And it's like, that is an externalization of personal power. And it's such like I don't want to use the term embarrassing, but it's almost like when I have people saying things like that, it's the exact type of thing that coaches work on, right? I imagine it's a lot of the things you work on in people with breath work that are starting out, realizing that, like, to the degree that you're saying, like, well, I need to do breath work to feel good. Well, if you need breath work to do that, if you need psychedelics to do that, if you need exercise to do that, if you need anything to feel something, then you're externalizing your personal power, right? Versus like, I feel great, and therefore I'm going to do these things because I enjoy them, right? And they help me have a better experience of life, but they're not what gives me my great experience of life. And I think that's like the biggest kind of like flip-flop that I see between society right now as a whole, right? Is those people that have done the work and are doing the work to find themselves, right? To allow themselves to be the experience of God in human form. And for anyone who's charged by the term God, source, universe, conscious, whatever you want to call it, right? I like using the term God because I've uncharged it for myself, right? I get what it is now. And by getting what it is, I just know for me. I don't know objectively, but I have my current belief system based on what helps me feel good. Now, that could be subject to change 10 minutes from now, if you have a better explanation than I currently have, right? I'd be like, oh, I like that. I'm going to take that on because that helps me feel better, right? But at the end of the day, it's all about personal responsibility. And that's one of the best things that breathwork, psychedelics, meditation, I mean, all of these things help you know thyself, right? And what is knowing thyself? It's knowing what God is, right? And what God is the ultimate expression, is the totality of everything. And what we are is individual cells helping God understand itself. Because if you follow like traditions like the mystery school, they talk about how the reason the third dimension exists, right? And the reason that human beings exist and the reason that there's so many of us and everything like this is because in higher dimensions, there were less beings, right? There might only be one being. If you're talking about Ensof from the complete ultimate one God monotheistic type point of view, you know, there's one being and that being is infinite, right? He lives infinitely, right? And so how much is he really going to be able to know himself if it's just one example of it, right? Versus trillions of examples of all the different infinite possibilities. That's a much better way for this God, this monotheistic one God, to understand itself. And I think that's one of the coolest ways to understand why I think monotheism and pantheism, like aka the belief in one God versus the belief that everything is God, are both the same, right? Because yes, there is, what I choose to believe is that there is one God, right? But therefore, everything that God has created is also God, including me, including you, including the house you're in, including the trees, including the cup of cacao sitting right here, including this microphone. Everything is made from the totality of one thing. And so it's such a paradox, but at the same time, that's why I'm so okay with realizing that I don't know because it's the mystery. Why do you want to know anything? It takes the mystery out.
Well, this is true. Psychedelics definitely gives us that opportunity, though. I love that part. Like, I remember my first ever ayahuasca journey, and I was so fucking scared, man. Like, I was just like, I remember like partnering with people and going, "Hey, have you done this before? What's it like? Hey, have you done this before? What's it like?" And I just wanted to gain control of some perspective to be like, "Okay, well, you're gonna be okay. You're gonna be okay." And then now it's like, knowing a trip report does help, yes, and definitely do your study and educate yourself on the molecules that you will be sitting with or creating a relationship with. But I get excited. I get excited about being like, I don't know anything, and I'm about to know just a little bit more after this experience, and I really love that experience. What excited me about what you were just saying and what was dropping in was, and I talk about this a lot with my students, is we have created such a large body of work from the very early ages. And I talk about this with quite passion. In the first 10,000 days of our experience as human beings is pretty much where our software becomes calibrated, right? In that first 10,000 days. And in that space, we spend majority of it in educational frameworks to which you need to go sit down in a chair, first and foremost, bad biomechanical behaviors and patterns coming in, teaching our bodies the wrong way to be, but also 6 to 8 hours of sit here, cause and effect. You must pass this. You must get this mark. You must do this to pass this class. That's a large body of work. 10,000 days. That's almost the longest thing you've ever done consistently in your behavior or your psychology, to which you arrive at this place now of being like, I don't know anything else. Like, that's what I know. And so these methods that we use, these medicines that we sit with, these holistic practices that we apply, breathwork, yoga, meditation, sun gazing, butthole sunning, all of it. We are undoing the initial scarcity mindset to which you described the people that were like, I don't know if I believe in God and life needs to have more meaning than just any potential, have created this rigidity. And I think we talked about this last time on the podcast, was this rigidity of what we have grown up in. And that is a large body of work. So for anyone listening thinking, wow, like I'm noticing some of these behavioral patterns coming through, I'm noticing some of these tendencies, how would I identify them further and how could I mitigate the onset of that? It's as simple as going back to the very beginning, identifying where we started in our journey, what come through. Talked about generational ancestral trauma right there, all the way back through utero. Ask and question mum, what was pregnancy like? What was my birth like? What was your diet like? What was the financial system like at that time? That is all what has affected your being, you as a person. And then when you enter the world, when you come earthside, the journey of birth, there's a whole big rabbit hole that I think you should explore, actually, by the way. Just a side note, I think you got to hook up with my sister Sarah and go down the rabbit hole of birth. But the journey of birth,
oh, hell yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna link you guys up.
Sign me up. I'll buy the ticket.
Dope conversation.
Yeah.
The journey of birth and what is the power in that container, and the power of the feminine being able to do the dance of birth on independently and as they should. And then as you enter the world, all the ideas that we think we know that babies should do all the way through infancy, adolescence, into young adulthood, and so on. Like, it's so rigid and outdated. And I imagine in the next 20 years, Ryan, we're going to see a generation much more advanced than what we have now, because what I'm seeing across the board, and mind you, I don't have a TV, I don't watch the news, I choose not to interact or engage with social media news as well. But what I am hearing and seeing anecdotally from people I know and people that know others is that people are removing their kids from school, unschooling or homeschooling. We unschool our children. And I have significantly noticed a drastic change in the way that these tiny little humans are interacting with this world, their spirits in reality. My 3-year-old son will pull anyone over in the street. Hey, what's your name? My name's Bill. My name starts with a B. What's your favorite song? And these adults are just like, what the hell is going on? A woman the other day says to me, she was with a toddler, and she was a beautiful woman, my son and I sitting on the top of my truck, we're watching the surf, and then this woman's walking around with a toddler, and my son chooses to engage, and he's talking to her, asking her these questions, and she says, wow, he's really confident, is he? I'm like, is he? Or is he just talking to you as a normal person? And she's like, oh, yeah, I guess he is. I'm like, we've just chosen to silence our children from a very early age with this rigid framework, and now this is the result. So I imagine in 20 years' time, Ryan, we're going to have a society much different to what we see today.
Dude, I love that. And, I 100% agree with you. And I think that that's one of the best aspects of quote unquote, just what's going on right now, is that more and more people now have the pain point because they're, children are being asked to do these things that are really challenging for their health. We'll just talk, very broad. But so what they're doing is they're going, well, you know what? I remember in my grade school, and I didn't really learn anything except the Pythagorean theorem. And, I never learned how to do taxes. I never learned anything, right? And, the funny joke I say is, I never learned taxes, but I learned the Pythagorean theorem. That'll come in real handy this Pythagorean theorem season, and it's like, it's like, so like, let's stop pretending for one moment that really anything we learn in school is actually useful in the real world. It's basically like, when I really look at it, it's just like some random person's idea of what's quote unquote important at best, right? It's one person's idea of it. And really, we are all individuals. Yes, we all come from the same source, right? We're all infinite spirit embodied in the human form, but we're all very unique, right? And that's the beauty of it. And the thing with school, and why I love that we're talking about this, is because, school forces us to be well-rounded and fit in a line, right? To fit into the line of quote unquote society, right? And what is this like fitting into a line of society? Well, that line is typically people who have also been told to fit into a line, and therefore working off of this broken system of, oh, well, now I have to be this because, they're telling me I have to stand straight in this line and I can't go off to the left and go explore this thing on the ground that I want to see because I have to sit in line. And if I don't, I'm going to be put in detention and all these things. And really, at the end of the day, we're not robots, right? Like, we are human beings, right? We are the human, which is the form, and the being, which is the formless, rolled into one. And I think that one of the best things is that more and more people are taking their kids out of school now, right? And so their kids are actually getting an education versus just schooling, right? And Paul Chek has a great quote he always says, which is, don't let your schooling get in the way of your education, right? Yeah. And he has another one, which is, what do you think PhD stands for? Piled higher and deeper, right? Because at the end of the day, like we were talking about, schooling in a big way closes your mind off. And so imagine if you go through grade school, okay, that's one level of it. Then you go to college, right? You get your associate's degree, that's another level of it. Then your bachelor's, that's another level. Then you go on to master's and PhD. I mean, you've been ultimately closed off in a lot of cases, not every case, of course, because everyone's different, but in a lot of cases, people are closed off. And I think that's one of the best things that, psychedelics, breathwork, all of these things can do for those of us that did go through grade school, that did have these things happen to us. And even those that aren't going through it, right? And are just curious, right? They allow us to break down these walls, to break down these confines and ask what is possible for us now, right? What is possible for us as individuals, as God embodied in human form? And without those questions being asked, really, like, the universe will only give you what you ask. And so if you don't know that exists, if you don't know there's other options out there and another reality waiting for you at the door, then how are you ever going to actually experience that? And so what breathwork specifically has been for me, and of course, psychedelics and all these things, but at the end of the day, psychedelics, while we love them, right, we're not doing them often, right? But breathwork, I can do 3 times a day if I want, right? Yeah. And every day. And so every day I'm getting a little reminder of like, hey, maybe you don't know what you knew, right? Like, oh, okay. Like I catch myself doing this a lot. Like, oh, all right. Yesterday I got this effect with breath work when I did it this way. So I'm going to do it again that way today. And then I get a totally different effect. I'm like, well, I guess I didn't know that either. Right. And what an amazing thing to realize, right? Because when you can apply that into your life, that type of like, well, maybe, I had this to eat yesterday and I liked it, but maybe today I won't. Maybe today I'll like it more. Right. When you realize that, that is the ultimate freedom, right? That is the ultimate putting the mystery back into life. Because at the end of the day, why do we really want to figure things out? Do we really want to know anything? Because when you look at children, right, they're not worried about knowing anything. And that's why that tree could be a portal into a gnome world, right? It could be a portal into, elves. They believe in the tooth fairy. They believe in Santa Claus. And, we adults are like, oh, those things aren't real. Well, how many beers have you had to drink today, right? How many joints have you had to smoke in the last 24 hours? And why, right? Why are you having to fall into those patterns? Maybe it's because life has become so mundane to you because at the end of the day, you're so worried about knowing things that you've forgotten that we're allegedly floating through a rock, allegedly through what's called space, and we don't know anything about it. And that is amazing. I mean, just being able to look at the stars and realize that we are a cell in a whole body of a cosmic universe is unbelievable. And kids have no problem getting there. And I think that, one thing that you're probably well aware of, right, is that one of the biggest misnomers I see is that people think that we, the parents, are meant to teach the children. And really, it's the opposite, right? The children are meant to teach us how to unlearn and not know things and pretend and, reinstill our best human superpower, which is that of imagination. It's the best human superpower.
Kids are phenomenal, brother. My children have taught me the most. There's a few things that I'd love to talk to. Is schooling for me. I've spent the last 5 years in my relationship with all psychedelics undoing the hurt that I feel from my time in school. And it wasn't the education that I received because I don't fucking remember any of that.
Yeah,
what
same.
I remember is how I interacted in the schoolyard and how I remember trying to be something I wasn't and spending a lot of time trying to be that person. And so I had to reteach myself as a 30-plus-year-old adult how to be in society, how to be a person in society, because I didn't get taught when I was younger because I tried to be something I wasn't, and I was encouraged to be something I wasn't. And so that in itself has created this line for me to explore of, oh shit, I identified that was wrong, and I'm seeing it now in my current life and exploring it. And so I teach it as a parent as well, and encouraging my children to be the full expression of whatever they want to be, right? My boy, who has been my biggest teacher, I have four children. I have a 10-year-old, a 6-year-old, a 3-year-old, and an 11-month-old. 2 are to a previous marriage, and I have 2 that are traveling with me. And my boy has been the biggest teacher because I see so much of myself in him. Man, he loves... Do you know who the Wiggles are?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So he loved the Wiggles when he was younger, and he loved the new Wiggles, which they have a female stands at the front now. She's yellow. She has a bow in her hair. And he used to love wearing her bow in his hair. He's got long hair like you do. And like, some of our family members be like, oh, you can't let him wear a bow. It's like, why the fuck not? Like, he wants to. So
yeah.
It doesn't mean anything. He just sees, oh, the Wiggles. Wiggles makes me feel good. I like the Wiggles. I like to sing. I like to dance. I like the colors. I want a bow in my hair because I feel like I'm a part of the Wiggles. Now, fucking adults do that every single day. We talk about nutrition. You eat something because it tastes good. You don't get curious about what it's doing to your body later. Henceforth, we live in a society where people have diabetes. Obesity is at its highest point yet. Heart disease. You're just thinking about that tastes good. And that can be the chasing of the dragon, the chasing of the white rabbit with psychedelics, as well as all breath work is, oh, I'm going to explore this because it makes me feel good. Yeah, to what point? Like, it's going to get to a point where it's like, that needs to stop. You need to stop chasing the tangible aspects of what these psychedelics are doing for you, because it goes much deeper than that. It's going to do more harm than good. And now, look, that has been one of the greatest things I've had the honor of being able to do, and supported by my family container, my wife predominantly, is, and look, when I explore the use of psychedelics or any plant medicines, it is always in a closed container with the people that I trust most in my life. And more often than not, I'd say about 90% of the time, it's with my wife by my side, and she's not exploring the use of psychedelics and plant medicine, just myself. But I ask her to be there to support me in her energy. It's very nurturing for me. But there has been moments where I've explored LSD, maybe just a smaller dose of LSD, and I've spent upwards of 6 hours playing with my kids and just being like, holy shit, I didn't know this world existed.
Yeah.
And they're still there. They're still there. But as adults, we've gone, no, don't believe in that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, don't believe in that. The Santa Claus narrative, we have chosen to tell our son that Santa Claus isn't real, but substitute it with the idea that Christmas is a time to connect. It's presence over giving presents, right? Be present with the people that you with. Let's share some beautiful food together and be jolly and have songs and love. And so the act of choosing not to tell him that Santa Claus isn't real was an act in being like, there's something much deeper we can teach here. And we wanted to teach that. But nowhere ever would we be like, don't imagine. Don't use your imagination. But society is telling us, don't use your imagination. And that's a broad term that we can talk in for right now. But
yes,
don't use your imagination.
100%. And yeah, like what you just said there is the perfect way to describe it, right? Because what does society do with, let's just use Santa Claus for an example, is that, they're like, well, believe in it. But then when you're 7, hey, you're too old for that. All right. Knock it off. Right. And so it's like versus telling your children like, yeah, Santa Claus, the person isn't real, but his spirit is real. And you can connect with it anytime you want, but especially during Christmas, because a lot of people on the planet are connecting into that same energetic frequency. And so that entity, right, is always there, right? And the curiosity and the stories about it can be real, right? But maybe the person that represents Santa Claus isn't necessarily real, right? And like you were saying, what does that teach the kid? Oh, well, then it's not about getting presents. It's about tuning into an energetic frequency that feels jolly, that feels loving, that feels inclusive of everyone, independent of age, gender, status, race, any of these, silly things that we still use to separate ourselves, right? Like at the end of the day, we are all human beings, allegedly. I mean, who knows? There might be aliens here too, but I choose to believe that because it helps my experience of life be more grand and great in nature. But at the end of the day, we're all humans, and so, yes, some of us might look different. Some of us might be, of course, different genders, all these things. But at the end of the day, if you can choose to show up with love to everyone because you see yourself in that person, then the world will be a much better place. And, for those, I imagine no one listening to this podcast would think this, but for anyone who might be listening going, oh, that's just hippy dippy bullshit, ask yourself why that's hippy dippy bullshit, right? Is it because it's actually hippy dippy bullshit objectively, or is it because someone told you it was and someone told that person it was, right? And somewhere down the line, someone was just traumatized as hell. And as they say, hurt people, right? Yeah. And at the end of the day, anyone who's trying to bring down the magic of life is someone who is hurting, right? The reason why you and I can talk about this stuff and open each other's minds and have this amazing, beautiful dialogue where we talk about all the mysteries of life and how we don't know is, why? Because we're handling our hurt, right? We've gone over a lot of it, and anything else that's in the way, we're happy to go face and hug and bring into the light, because that's the whole purpose of this life, right? I choose to believe that as souls, we come into this life with a mission of some sort, right? And that mission could be, to learn, endless different types of lessons, right? And wherever those lessons are in our quote unquote traumas, right? And also to the degree that we heal our traumas is the degree to which we will be able to relate to people who have similar traumas and help them through this process. Because let's face it, this process, especially when you have to have a job and pay bills and everything, can be sticky, right? Like a lot of people don't have time to go take 6 months off and live in the woods, right? Like even you being nomadic right now, you still got to pay bills, still got to do stuff, right? So it's, of course, it'd be great if we were all billionaires, right? But at the end of the day, we're not, right? And that's totally fine. So how do we do this in the societal paradigms that we are living within? Well, a lot of the ways to gain awareness very quickly can be things like breathwork, right? Which is what you do with BreathCAST specifically, is give people the opportunity to do this wherever they are at any time, right? And have your assistance. And for those looking to go deeper, you do it with Inflaux. Like, hey, become certified and become a practitioner of this. So you can actually go out into the world. And when you're talking to people and you can see they're hurting, it's like, hey, sit down with me for a second. Try this out, right? And that can be really the best way to meet people where they're at, right? Because psychedelics, although they're becoming less stigmatized, are still a little daunting to most people, right? Like, wait, you tell me I'm going to do what? Even though they've been a part of human nature, except for the last 150 years since the dawn of time, we've been programmed to think that they're outside the norm and they're extreme, right? But breath work, everyone breathes, right? Unless they're dead. And so, getting someone to say, hey, that thing you do, what is it, 28,000 times per day or whatever it is? Why don't you just try doing, why don't you just try doing it a little faster, or doing some holds, or doing it just out of your nose, or doing any of these different ways. And so that's why I love what you guys do. And I'm such a big supporter of it, because as an eternal student of life, I love specifically things like breath work, because I do enjoy psychedelics, right? And breath work, for anyone who hasn't done it, will give you a very similar feeling, much quicker, of course, but also it can be lasting as well to a psychedelic, but one that you have on demand, on tap at any time. And that's, I think, one of the most beautiful gifts in life.
It's a deeper transformation. We, in Inflaux, we talk about through module 2. So our modules are structured. The first module is the child. The second module is the shadow. And then the third module is our integration, where we start to integrate, get our hands dirty. And we're actually in the third module right now with our class. We're developing a workshop/seminar within the certification. So the students are leaving jam-packed full of info and ready to rock. But we talk about making longer lasting transformations. So we talk about what shapes and sounds our breath is making with our biology, and then understanding the story related to that biological pattern, right? So if we breathe in a certain way, I would look at a person and anatomically analyze how they breathe. I can tell you're a nose breather, right? From the shape of your mandible to the shape of your nose to the way that you talk and take breaths. I can tell that you're a nose breather predominantly. And I imagine that shifted some point where you became completely aware of how you are in control of your health. And then you're like, okay, sure, I'm going to do that. And so I would analyze somebody's anatomy and be like, okay, this is... And now we can start to identify the shapes and sounds. Why are you making these shapes when you breathe? Like if I go, what am I doing with my facial structure in order to create the shape and the sound of the breath? And what is that doing internally? There's a physiological response occurring with the nervous system. We break that down further. That goes into story work, right? And then we break down that even further, and that goes into conditioning. And we start to identify, where are these patterns coming from? So the way that you're telling me that I breathe, or the way that my nervous system is upregulated, is caused potentially by this one incident that occurred within my ancestral line because of these things. And we break that down further. We go deep into that in the shadow work, where we start to look at the elements of socioeconomics. We look at what nutrition was available. We're talking 3 generations previous, so it would be generational trauma. We're talking about nutrition that was available. What kind of pesticides were within the nutritional framework at that point that would be impacting our biology. We talk about what news and media was out at that time, what people were stressed about the most at that time, what chemicals were being ingested at that time. Like alcohol was much healthier way back in the day than it is now. Cigarettes were much healthier way back in the day than they are now, right? So there is a lot of things that add to the element of our breath. Now, if we can take that idea and go that, okay, so you're telling me that my biology has been mimicked for the 33 years that I've been alive by all these other things. Yes. Okay, cool. Now let's break down the elements of that so that we can get you breathing better and start to bring the body back into alignment and back into balance. And you can do that many ways. Like you can, for the most part, society just needs to chill the fuck out and do something. 5 minutes a day, every single day, right? Let's just start there, fam. Let's start there. 5 minutes a day, in through the nose, out through the nose, circular breathing, consistent, connected. If you got better at that and you wanted to take it deeper, you could add a triangle breath pattern to where you could inhale for a certain amount of time, exhale out the mouth for a certain amount of time, add a hold or retention and suspension, right? Suspend the breath. Give the nervous system a chance to reset, the diaphragm a moment to go, okay, this is what we're doing, because the body is still behaving in a way that it needs time to learn, large body of work. And then if you get better at that, maybe we add a box pattern and we start to learn different holds at different regressions, different tempos. We can utilize different sounds. We can do this, which is an ocean breath sound where we're constricting and contracting at the back of the throat, which is bringing the respiratory system into alignment. We can do that, get better at that. Now we can explore what it can do to alter states of consciousness. You do not need to be going to YouTube, typing in Wim Hof method and spending 30 days doing it. I've said it before. I'll say it 100 times again. We need to sit down, do 5 minutes a day at the start of your day when melatonin is at its highest point. As soon as you wake up, 5 minutes in and out of the nose, circular, consistent, connected breathing. When you get better at that, take the next step. If you're looking to find someone who can teach you that, I am here for support. I imagine you can put my details in the show notes.
Yes.
Not just that, I am coaching coaches from all around the world. We currently have students in Scotland, the US. We have students in Spain. We have students in Costa Rica. We have students here in Australia. We have students in England. We have people around that are doing things. Right? So if you need coaches or support, and by students and breathwork practitioners, that means people that I work with as well as teach, let us know. There are people around that can show you. The way that I teach breathwork, just to dive on that a little further, isn't this idea of just adding an extra holistic or spiritual practice. The way I teach breathwork is to dive deep into our biology. It's to dive deep into our ancestral behaviors and patterns. It's to understand where we come from and why we are the way that we are. It is to unpack trauma, right? And trauma is the way we perceive the situation to where we experience either risk or danger, and the trauma remained in the tissue because we manifest it based upon our emotional response. And so I teach breathwork as a way to unpack that and then integrate it into our life so that we can level up, so that we can get out of our own way and get unstuck.
I love that, man. I mean, as they say, the issues are in your tissues, right? And what I love about, what I love about your approach and why, I was really excited to have you on this podcast as well, is because I want to make sure that people realize that breath work is incredible, right? But like you said, if you're just going on YouTube and looking up Wim Hof breathing, like Wim Hof's an amazing guy, right? But I can imagine, right? I think you've met him before, right? Have you met him in person?
No, I haven't met him in person, no.
Well, I imagine that, like, when you go pay money to sit with him and learn his breathwork style, he's not just doing the breathwork on YouTube, right? Yeah, like, you know what I mean? Like, so, those things are on there to allow you to gain awareness around who he is, but that's not the full scope of what it is. It would almost be like within cannabis, right? We'll talk cannabis, that's my realm. It's almost like in cannabis, people saying like, hey, take this CBD tincture and now you know cannabis. It's like, no, you don't understand cannabis at all, right? Because you're taking an isolated form or isolated constituent of the cannabis plant that's usually, synthetically farmed and all of these types of things. And then you're applying it to the full scope of what cannabis is. And what I love about your approach is that it is the full spectrum approach, to use more cannabis terminology, right? It is an individualized approach. It's almost like if someone in the realm of cannabis was to use chromatography to map out your endocannabinoid system, your specific endocannabinoid system, figure out where your CB1 receptors are, CB2 receptors, and what concentrations they're in, and then be able to reverse engineer that to be able to discover exactly what strains, what terpene profiles, what flavonoids, what different ratios work with your specific body. Because if you just go into a place and get CBD tincture, or you go into a dispensary and get a random strain, you might get some results, but you know what? There's also much better results out there. And so for those listening, yeah, you might enjoy Wim Hof breathing, but how do you know that that's the exact way, like, that's meant for your individual biology to interact with breath work, right? Like, you're giving people the entire story, right? Not just one part of one chapter. And I think that is again, how you do anything is how you do everything. If you're someone who is really invested in their health, if you're someone who is really invested in using psychedelics consciously, right, and responsibly, right, then why would you not choose to do things like breath work in a way that are also conscious, responsible, and ultimately allow you to really accentuate your well-being to a level that is far beyond what you're going to gain by hacking the system and just going onto YouTube. YouTube and places like that can be great to understand, like, what is this breath work thing people talk about? But if you really want to master your own physiology, you work with someone like Bill, who actually knows what he's doing and can actually guide you and knows individually what you need to thrive with regards to breath work. And I imagine many other things as well. So yeah, I love that, man.
Oh, yeah. And look, my coaches that I'm currently educating, because I'm in a business partnership with our close friend Brady as well.
Yes.
Brady brings the music, which is the medicine as well. And we unpack our relationship with music and the lyrics and the tones and vibrations and the frequencies to how they interact with our biology. And then we partner the breath. Now, when we work with our students, they're very keen to learn about breathwork. How do I do breathwork? Because they've been so encouraged and inspired by the atmosphere of Wim Hof or, XPT or maybe Brian McKenzie. Like, they've been inspired, which are great. These are all great facilitators and great educational humans and educated humans in breathwork. But there's more, right? And so we actually don't get our hands dirty. We're in module 3 now, and the students are only being assessed on their application of breathwork and guiding people through breath now, because there's a lot more. Like you said, you need to understand more of the realm of what is occurring in humans. And so we do a lot of self-development work. We go through a lot of Carl Jung's psychology framework, where we start to unpack archetypes and learn where we fit, quote unquote, into that bracket, so that we can better understand our personality traits. We then go into behavioral conditions from our family and our environments, and we talk about epigenetics, and we talk about how that's important, how we're being signaled and our nervous system's responding to that. Because listeners, while you are listening here, if I can get your attention, your nervous system is a person on the inside of you trying to behave on the outside of you. If you understand that, yes, you'll have a much easier day at work. But
yes,
our nervous systems are trying to interact with the outside world from the inside out. And so when we can better understand what is influencing those things, we can now get a better understanding of, okay, well, now I can apply this specific breath work. You know, one of my students guided us 2 weeks ago, and we did triangle breathing, box breathing, and circular breathing. They were the only parameters Brady and myself put on the assessment. All of us blew off into the cosmos. Now, those specific types of breath work aren't really up-regulatory at all, to where you would normally find an up-regulatory breath practice would blast you into the cosmos. They're super down-regulatory, and in fact, they're more put you in a state of flow. We all blasted off. Why? Because the unique elements and characteristics were discussed at the start of the practice. The music matched the vibration as well, and it was the vibration. And then the way that the student delivered the breath work itself interacted with our biology in the way that we created that container. So there's much more going on, you know. And I will caveat, look, Wim Hof is a phenomenal person. I've spoken about this before. I don't feel need to justify, but he's a phenomenal person. His education is phenomenal, but it's not for everybody. It may be eventually, but it's not right now. People need to start at the bottom.
Yeah, exactly. You don't start at 11, right? To use Spinal Tap again, right? You start at 1, depending on where you're at. Now, again, like there might be a time where you're playing, like let's use music as an example, right? When you're starting to play guitar, for instance, because I play guitar, so I'll use that as a personal example. When you're starting to play guitar, you're not cranking that thing to 10, right? Because usually it sounds like garbage. But at a certain point, after you've practiced a lot, you might play an auditorium. And then you might crank it to 5, and then you might play a bigger auditorium and crank it to 7, right? So I think the biggest challenge I've found with things like Wim Hof is not that Wim Hof is a bad style. It's an amazing style, but a lot of times it starts at level 7 or 10. And for a lot of people, like you were talking about, you know, especially, you know, and this is really applicable to psychedelics too. You know, for a lot of people that are looking to interact with a psychedelic or breath work, right? Because they're really synonymous in a lot of ways, you know, their nervous system is already being taxed and is already at like an 8, right? And then they're putting more stress on top of that when really they need to subtract cars from the traffic jam that is their neurological system rather than add more cars into that system and make the traffic jam worse. And so for me, it makes perfect sense. And, you know, I'm really glad that you're doing what you're doing because I'm really excited to learn from you, man. I'm super pumped, you know, breath work is one of my favorite things. So yeah.
Thanks, brother. I appreciate that.
Of course. Absolutely, man. And, you know, we have a couple minutes left and I want to ask you a question that I typically don't ask at the end, but I want to do it. All right. So what is your most funny, hilarious, and impactful psychedelic story? Since this is called This One Time on Psychedelics, right? We got to do one story.
I'll use the second last impactful one I've had. Okay, cool. So I have had the honor of sitting with ayahuasca, wachuma. I have had the honor of holding space for Kambo, not taking Kambo or being administered Kambo, but holding space. I have practiced regularly psilocybin, harpe, MDMA, cannabis. And more recently, I started to explore the phenomenal creation from Alexander Shulgin, 2CB. 2CB is like the most intense ayahuasca journey you can imagine, jammed into 3 hours with the come up instantly. Like as soon as you encephalate, like it goes in through the nose, it burns like the Dickens. Like as soon as it goes in, it starts. Like it's such an intense journey. But prior to my 2CB journey, and also ketamine as well, I've been practicing with ketamine of late, which is such a powerful and beautiful medicine as well when practiced appropriately. the story I will tell is my psilocybin story, which happened 7 weeks ago. Now, we were sitting by a fire out in the bush, and I was, like I said, I was in a enclosed container. There was 5 of us. And we'd spent the whole day together bathing in the river, which is this beautiful, clean river that you can drink from. Bathing in the river, we'd had this beautiful meal together, and we'd simply been spending time together. I was with very close friends. That evening, we decided we'd go 7 grams of psilocybin. Correction, 5 grams of psilocybin. The mini dose was 3. I took an extra 2, it was 5. And we were spending time around the fire, sharing music, more medicine, sharing stories and talking. I remember laying down at one stage, right next to my sister Sarah, and looking up at the stars. This is one of those moments where I realized as a child I'd been blinded, but I'm lying up there, I'm like, they are so twinkly. And she's like, of course they're twinkly. And I'm like, yeah, but they're really twinkly. She's like, they're always that way. And I was like, are they? And so that first part blew my mind. The second part was, my friend, Adam, can play Mozart on an acoustic guitar, or nearly all Mozart, but can play Mozart on acoustic guitar, any guitar. And I asked him, I said, hey, would you be interested in playing Mozart? Because he'd been guiding us all night. He said, I'd love to. And so we all sat there and were prepared, and he starts playing Mozart. And halfway through, I say to Sarah, I think I need to lay down. My body's about to release something. And I'm like, okay. And she's like, okay, sure. So I lay down. He's still playing Mozart. Before it's too late, I put my foot in the fire. And not only did I put my foot in the fire, I fucking burnt my toes. Like 3rd-degree burns on my toes.
Oh my God.
I come to, and I'm like, Sarah, I think I've been bitten. She's like, oh no, you fucking burnt your toes. And I'm like, what? And so we're all applying first aid to what we knew. And I'm sitting in on the lounge, and they're all talking to me. I'm not really listening. I'm listening to her. She's guiding me, talking to me. She's sending energy through me. And I start to tap in, and I'm breathing. I'm circular breathing. And I'm like, okay, we've burnt toes. This is an accident. This is trauma to the body. The tissue's traumatized. I need to start to recover. I need to start the healing process. And so I start actively circular breathing. And then I feel my brain try to go, hey, here's some adrenaline. No. I don't want some adrenaline yet. And it goes, oh, here's some cortisol. I'm like, I don't want that either. And so I'm still breathing. No pain at this stage. This is about 6-ish hours into the psilocybin journey. No pain all night until the next morning where I come to, and there was a little bit of pain, but I was still circular breathing, and I'd still focused on healing my body. Now, the last 7 weeks has been me integrating this burnt foot, right? As you know, I'm running across the country next year to film a documentary. I've not been able to run at all, right? So that's really impacted me. But in that time, I've been able to lock down who I am as a father and who I am as a husband, and be able to spend time with my children the way that I need to and the way that they need me to show up as well. And so, as funny as it was initially, it turned into this huge, huge learning journey, and I'm so grateful that it happened to me because, man, like, it's been a journey.
Wow. That is I heard a little bit of that story when we first connected. It was for Highly Optimized. It was pretty soon after that it happened. And I remember you're like, yeah, I can't wait to tell that. And that was the one I was hoping you told on this because, that's why a couple things are important, right? Of course, like you were doing, it's always important to be safe, but also sometimes things simply happen, right? And so if those things happen, especially if you're interacting with psychedelics, right? And that could simply be someone having a release, right? That they weren't expecting, or it could be someone burning their toes, right? It's important in that moment to stay in control, right? Whatever that word control means. We'll use control in quotations, right? Because we know there is no control, but at the same time, there is the ability to control the system that is your neurological system, is your biology, things like that. And so it's so important to be able to, rest and digest, stay parasympathetic when that's happening, and be able to go, okay, this happened. Now what? right? Instead of like, oh my God, I'm panicking. What do we do? Do we go to the hospital? No, right? Like that could be a challenge, right? Of course, there's a time and place where, yes, I mean, you just have to. But in that area, because you were able to stay calm, you were able to realize like, okay, I don't need to go to the hospital, but I do need some attention. And I'm going to be able to give myself the attention that my body needs, while other people that luckily were around you to support you, because you chose to do this consciously and you chose to have people around you that could support you in case something went wrong, or, right, if everything went right? Those people were there to support you and you were there to support them. You were able to have them support you and allow you to surrender into just getting your neurological system under control, for lack of a better term, and everything was fine. And so, I love that story, man. And this has been an amazing ride. And I want to make sure people know where they can find you, where they can find out more about Inflaux, BreathCAST, anything you got, drop it.
Yeah, I'm on Instagram, so at WilliamNJB, and everything that I post is related to BreathCAST or Inflaux. We have the BreathCAST page. It's more of a business thing, and we are transitioning into a new style of BreathCAST currently, to which more information later. But the Inflaux Class 3 is starting in January next year online. It is 12 weeks, and you will have both myself and Brady at the helm supporting you for this 12-week transformation. Outside of that, next April 2022, we will be hosting a 5-day immersive retreat in Costa Rica, to where myself, Brady, and another fellow practitioner of ours is going to be holding space. And yeah, I invite you to explore, or at least reach out and find some more information if it aligns. It will be plant medicines, as well as breath work, as well as self-development, as well as story work through music, and some other cool holistic practices that we're going to apply as well.
Man, that sounds absolutely amazing. And my last question for you, Bill, is if someone listening was just swayed by you to experience psychedelic medicines for the first time, what is the one piece of advice that Bill Burnett would suggest to them to allow them to have the smoothest experience possible?
When you choose the medicine, know that you haven't chosen it, it's chosen you. And when you get the honor of sitting with the medicine, I would invite you to explore it on your own in a space that you feel secure and safe, and at the very least have someone who is closely supportive by you.
Spoken like a true wizard. I love it, man. Guys, when Bill and I first met and had a chat, I knew immediately I'd get bunk beds with that guy in a heartbeat. His energy and zest for life is, as I am sure you all felt, addictive and inspiring, all wrapped into one amazing package. I get my battery charged more than ever when I can feel someone's passion and purpose is burning and fueling their inner child to allow them to be in constant awe and curiosity of the truly amazing world we live in, and this wild ride that we call the human experience. Bill fits that description to a T, and is someone I am extremely excited to continue connecting with and learning from, as I truly believe he is the best in the business when it comes to breathwork and being able to apply his unique way of interacting with this modality into realms such as that of plant medicines and psychedelics, along with just about any other realm one can imagine. Bill is dedicated and committed to his mission of helping people take back control of their health through the modality of breathwork. And if you heard the call and listening to this pure heart flow between the two of us, then please reach out to him to discover how you can begin taking your power back and becoming the best, happiest, and healthiest version of yourself possible today. I imagine we can all agree that life is far too short to not be thriving 24/7, and connecting to your breath is the fastest and most available way to accomplish that, period. Bill, thank you so much for being the bright light you are, for being a testament to what integration can look like for not only plant medicines, but for life as a whole, and for sharing your time and wisdom with the listeners and me today. And until next time, my brother, may your journey be smooth and full of light. Aho.